Welcome to What is Going Om, for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Times flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome to this very special edition of What is Going On. Why special? Because with climate change, COVID, geopolitical upheaval and war causing stress, anxiety, fear and depression and ill health across the globe, there's never been a more important time for us to discover that regardless of what is happening around us or to us, we all have the power to create miracles that can transform our health, our lives, and the future of humanity. If you find that hard to believe, stay tuned, because with me today to discuss their groundbreaking, multi-award-winning film, The Way of Miracles, a renowned New Thought teacher, best-selling author, Dr. Deepak Chopra, quantum energy healer and nutritional therapist, Mark Mincolla, PhD, and award-winning producer and director, Christina Vircillo Bresson. Deepak, Mark, Christina, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Christina, if I could start with you. I mean, the timing of this documentary couldn't be more perfect. The world is badly in need of miracles. So tell us how it came about, whose idea it was, and how the three of you came together in its production.
Sure. So I was introduced to Mark through his son, actually. And I had been working with Deepak for years in this field. And when Mark was brought to my attention, I started to look him up, and he had dedicated his life to healing others, and the 60,000 plus patients that he's seen. I mean, the results were incredible, and I thought this is a story that has to be told. And I really wanted to bring a lot of the work that Deepak and I had been doing, really threaded throughout the film through these patients' stories, to really kind of bring a wholeness to it. So we have these patient stories and Mark's stories, which are incredible, and really thread the science that's really there throughout it. And that's really how the whole thing came together.
Deepak, you've been writing about quantum healing, infinite potential, super genes, reinventing the body, resurrecting the soul for many years, and you've created your own documentaries and appeared in many others. So none of this was new to you. So what excited you about getting involved with this particular project?
Well, I've always been interested in healing, and I've always also had this insight that there's no explanation for any experience right now. For example, right now, this experience we're having, there's no biological explanation for it. All that's happening in the nervous system is electrochemistry. When you're having this experience, you're looking at me, you're hearing sound, there's no sound in your brain, there are no images, no colors, and that we experience the universe. So in my view, existence is a miracle. And if existence is a miracle, then every moment is a miracle. The word miracle derives from the word mirare in Latin, means to be filled with wonder. So if you're not filled with wonder every second of your existence, then your humanity is incomplete. So I wanted to participate in the film just to make this point, that anyone who thinks that every moment, including disease, including birth, including death, we don't know why we have experience. The consciousness is a miracle, and thereafter everything is a miracle. That's why I want to participate.
Yeah, and
it's the return of the memory of wholeness. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And today we actually have the neuroscience now to back it all up.
It's true, but science is also an explanation in consciousness. So science is very incomplete in its understanding of knowledge, and that includes quantum mechanics. It's mathematics. Why is mathematics so effective? Because mathematics also is a modified form of consciousness.
That's absolutely true. But I think, as Mark's book proves, I mean, there's so rich and so much science in there that people do need a bit of science in order to give an idea credibility. And I think this is something that everybody in the world needs to understand.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. So, Mark, your latest book is The Way of Miracles, Accessing Your Superconsciousness. Did you write the book before or after the movie?
I wrote the book during the filming, the planning. Christina and I started planning a lot of time together on the telephone, just mapping things out. And from the very early beginning, I started writing the book as we were mapping everything out for the film, and they're parallel all the way down the line.
Good way to do it. So, Christina, I mean, Mark has seen many, many miracles in those 60,000 people that he's worked with. How did you choose whose stories of miracle healings to share?
So I met a bunch of Mark's patients, and what I really wanted to make sure that we had in the film were different healing stories, some that, so that there could be something for everybody. Because depending on where you are and your awareness in this space, you have a different perspective. And so we wanted to have healing stories that were associated with, Mark's a nutritionist, so around food as medicine. We wanted to also go into the effects of your emotional health and your thoughts on your physicality, and go deeper into the spiritual nature. And then we go, all the way into the soul. And so I really wanted to span across the different patient stories so that you can see the different aspects of healing for all of these different people. And then as a viewer, when you come to the film, there's something for you because, ultimately it spans across this, whole person medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. Deepak, the movie and Mark's book talk about superconsciousness. What is superconsciousness and how does it relate to healing and miracle making?
In wisdom traditions, superconsciousness is pure consciousness without being modified into the conditioned mind. So if the mind is conditioned through economics, through history, through race, through everything that we call experience, mind never gives us access to truth, and also lies, because your mind tells you the earth is flat. Nobody believes that anymore. Your mind tells you your body is a three-dimensional physical entity. That's not true either. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is that which modifies itself into experience of mind, of body, of emotions, of the world, of perception, and any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought. That's what consciousness modifies itself into. But before it modifies itself into that experience, it has certain qualities. It's a field of infinite possibilities. It's formless. It's self-organizing. It's self-evolving. It's self-regulating. And it's creative. And so left alone, pure consciousness is all you need for self-regulation, homeostasis, which is what we call healing. So every modality of healing, to some extent, has to access pure consciousness, what Dr. Mincolla, what the good doctor is calling super consciousness, is pure consciousness, without modifying itself into mind. So as soon as you have a thought, that's not consciousness. That the source of thought is consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like a step above. Yeah. Mark, you've been practicing as a nutritional therapist and quantum energy healer for many years, and you've witnessed countless miracles. You led a relatively healthy life, and yet you also had your own experience of a life-threatening illness from which you cured yourself. How did you do that?
Well, in the middle of the film, we were actually, again, mapping everything out, mapping the patients out, the patients' stories, getting ready to create an opportunity for the patients to tell their unique, remarkable miracle stories. And right in the middle of all this, I came down with Lyme disease. I was bitten by a Lyme tick, and I got very sick with Lyme disease. And I essentially was paralyzed for the better part of 2 weeks. And the physicians that I worked with, many of the friends of mine and the different hospital people I worked with, et cetera, were not convinced that I was going to be able to walk again. It wasn't a slam dunk. So during that period, I did some very serious soul searching. I decided that I wanted to confront myself. I spent 14 hours on a bathroom floor. I'd fallen on a hard tile bathroom floor, spent 14 hours on the floor. During that time, I had some very serious questions about my life. And I confronted myself at a very deep level about how I felt about living if I couldn't move my body anymore, if I was in a wheelchair, if I was crippled, if I was disadvantaged to that extent. Would I still be able to muster up the spirit to do what I had always wanted to do, and to do what I was planning on doing in this case? And I didn't have an answer. So about 25 minutes goes by in the middle of this question: do I want to continue to live and do what I'm doing if I'm profoundly compromised? And about 25 minutes went by, and I didn't have an answer. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, I started screaming for help. I let out the loudest screams for help. Help! Anybody? Can anybody hear me? Help! 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 Can anybody hear me? Which actually served to show me that I wanted to live. That's how I knew that I wanted to continue regardless, unconditionally. I was alarmed, shocked by the fact that I was so driven to call for help. Now that's what actually awakened me to that possibility. But I was determined on that bathroom floor, from that point on, to start putting the pieces of a different vision together for myself, visualizing myself well, capable, fully engaged physically, healed, and whole, and more than capable of doing the work that I so dreamed to do. And it did change. My life changed. My life turned around. My body changed. My cells changed. And I'm convinced that even though the supplements that I took were important, and the nutrition plan that I was on was important, and all the different therapeutic adjuncts were very important in my healing process, the single most important thing that brought me through that and that took me on to the next level of my work was the fact that my mind, in my deeper mind, was determined to do so. And I was completely dedicated and devoted to the notion of seeing it through and being well. And then it happened. I became well again, and I've been fine ever since.
Wow, yeah, that's quite a piece of truth there, because we talk about belief, and belief is so important in healing, but the intention is the most important thing, and that's what you found.
Yes.
Yeah. Christina, there are several luminaries that appear in the Way of Miracles. Tell us who they are and why you chose them.
Well, Deepak's obviously in the film. And we know all about his work. I have Dr. Shamini Jan in the film, and she talks about the biofield. She actually has done a lot of work on the science of the biofield, and so that's the bridge between the mind and the body, and it's governed by consciousness, I'd say. So it's important for me. So when Mark's doing work and he's tapping into people, he's tapping into this space. It's a conscious living space. And so Shamini's is in the film, talks about the biofield. We have Dr. Paul Mills has done a lot of work with Deepak at the Chopra Center. They've done research on, the importance of gratitude and an open heart, just the effects, biological effects on inflammation. So they've done a lot of work there. That was also an important part of the film is, understand, because self-love is also an important part in this film. And Roland McCready from Heart Math Institute is in the film. There's so much that we had to cut out, but there's so much wisdom that they were able to share with us. But the importance of that space, tapping into that heart space. Of course, we have Bruce Lipton. He's talking about epigenetics. menos kafatos, really tapping into understanding the deeper nature of reality, which is something that is very exciting for me to share in this film. And I hope that when people see that part, they can really go deeper into that space, understanding that. And who else we have?
Rupert Sheldrake.
Rupert Sheldrake, yes. I mean, and I saw that he was just on your show. He is talking about the fields. I mean,
Yes.
This was just an incredible lineup. I was so fortunate to have them all and thread them throughout the film and throughout the patients' healing stories. And Beverly Rubik, who coined the term biofield, I believe. Also was in the film.
Deepak, tell us what science reveals about the connection between the heart, body, and consciousness, and the neuroscience of miracles.
Science is a methodology, and science is a methodology that involves three things: observation, experiment, validation, or falsification. Science is very limited in its ability to know fundamental truth. We should be very careful in differentiating science from scientism. So scientism is a religion and science is a methodology. And science deals with less than 1% of human experience. Nevertheless, from a scientific perspective, we can look at concepts like biofield, energy, and modalities like Reiki and nutrition. And we're beginning to understand that less than 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. So they guarantee the disease. So if somebody has a gene like the BRCA gene, as Angelina Jolie had, she had a mastectomy to prevent her from getting the cancer, which was the wise thing to do, because there are a few genes that are fully penetrant in cancer, in autoimmune illness, etc. Fully penetrant means they guarantee the disease. In the next few years, and I'm actually in conversation with people who are creating CRISPR, you'll be able to cut and paste genes the same way as you cut and paste emails. So you read the barcode of a gene, read the gene that is effective, insert the gene that is normal, and you should cure the disease. But again, having said that, only 5% or less will be affected by that. So the rest of what we call healing is based on sleep, stress management, mind-body coordination, emotions, biological rhythms, connection with nature, transcendence, and actually directing attention and intention through consciousness, modifying our experiences of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, fundamental experience. The rest is a human story. So even science is a human construct. And right now, all the people that are apostles of scientism, like Richard Dawkins and many others, don't actually know the difference between scientific methodology and scientism, which is a religion. And we have to be very careful that we don't give too much credit to science, because science itself is an activity in consciousness. Science does not explain consciousness. Quantum mechanics does not explain consciousness. Consciousness explains science.
Yes.
Mechanics. It's the other way around. So as long as we recognize this, then all these different modalities work synergistically to bring about healing. But let's not give too much credit to science and become ourselves the apostles of a religion.
Yeah. Mark, you say in your book that as much as we may be reluctant to admit it, we are divine. In actuality, we can't be any less divine or any more human than we are. We're a perfectly imperfect dichotomy. Say more about that.
Well, I think of a metaphor like the Tai Chi circle. I think of the fact that when I look at the Tai Chi circle, I see a perfect circular hole that's made up of two mutually compatible opposites. And there's the dark with the light and the light with the dark. And they're sort of representative as a metaphor for who we are. We are light, we are dark, we're whole if we perceive ourselves as such. And I think that to understand that the parts of us that we tend to separate ourselves from, especially in this culture with a lot of critical nature that we're raised with, we see ourselves, like to coin the term religious distortions. The idea that we're sinners, the idea that we should be guilt-ridden because we did this wrong, we do that wrong, we make mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. I think we tend to focus on a judgmental spirit within ourselves from time to time, and I think that's important to neutralize with the concept of the Tai Chi circle, for example, and to see that the beautiful part of our higher self and lower self, the beautiful part of our divine self and our broken child, our wounded child self, is that there's a complete whole there. There's a hole between the two that exists. And just the instinct that we might have in our culture to cling to the light side of this Tai Chi circle and stay away from the dark side. You're leaving yourself with a semicircle. You're leaving yourself unwhole. And I think that addiction and things like that tend to draw us into that half circle. And there's no greater beauty in our life than to embrace the wholeness of what we are. And I think the wholeness of what we are is essential for us to tap into for miracle healing. I think so many patients that I work with are convinced. They've done so many miracle healing. I've seen so many miracle healings over the years. Remarkable healings, remarkable. End-stage cancers, et cetera, et cetera. But I say that the patient doesn't know the fact. Many of them don't know. Their healing came about from themselves. They healed themselves. They're not connected with that in many cases. They don't see it that way. They see that I did it. They see that medicine did it. They see that their other family doctors, their medical team did it, their health team did it. They did it. They just don't know that they did it. And I think there's a self-contempt factor there that we need to evolve beyond, and to evolve beyond self-contempt into a place of unconditional self-love.
Well, also, I think that so many people, they have so little faith in themselves or so little knowledge of their own ability that they give their power away. They give their power away to authorities, to doctors that they think can heal them. Yes. Your patients are giving their power away to you, in a sense, until they understand that they created it.
We make sure that they understand that the healing comes through them.
Through them, absolutely.
Not through anybody else. It comes through them.
Yeah. So how do we begin to help people understand the wholeness and how to achieve it?
Well, one of the things I often say is I ask my patients, go home and check out your scrapbooks, your family photos, find a picture of yourself at 5 years old. And then I want you to look at that picture of yourself as a 5-year-old and see two things: innocence and deservedness. There's a purity there that we forget as we age. And we don't do well in many cases going from that earlier phase of our lives with innocence and deservedness and to move into an adult phase where we see ourselves more critically. So I think it's really important to realize that innocence and that deservedness is never gone. It's always there. It's always there. It's there forever and always. It's there for an eternity. It's who we are. It's what we're made of. It's conceptually representative of our total whole self. So I think it's important just to create little exercises for people to tap into their innocence and deservedness.
Yeah, deservedness is a big one, isn't it? Yeah. Christina, what sort of response have you had to the movie? I know it's won at least 6 awards. It must be very gratifying.
What's gratifying is when, actually, we just had a screening in a theater, and to watch people watch it and to be moved by it or to be affected by it, that's really gratifying. To have someone come and say, this really touched me, or this, I have so many more questions, or I wasn't aware of this. That's gratifying, for sure.
Yeah. So when you were already very aware of all of these things that the movie covers, but was there anything that you didn't know that changed your perspective?
Absolutely. Working on the film, it definitely worked on me while I worked on it, so there were things that, were in a lot of the wisdom that Mark was sharing, or that the luminaries were sharing. And as I'm working on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that, or I have, so I was able to do a lot of inner alchemy work while I worked on the film. So that was, eye-opening, when you see your own issues, whether it's control or whatever, self-judgment or things. So yeah, of course there was tons that, it had a transformative effect on me. And also anchoring into a practice. I'd say, there's a lot that I came to the film with knowing, mentally knowing, but not when you really get into a practice, an embodiment practice, you really can have some inner transformation, some inner deeper connections with self, really building a deeper connection with self, I would say, for sure, working on the film. Those are things that intellectually, a lot of people that are walking this path, you intellectually, you learn things, but it's a deep inner knowing when you really practice them.
Yeah, you get it in the muscle then, don't you? Yeah. Deepak, you've said we need to know ourselves in a new way. And your latest book, Metahuman, unlocks the secrets to moving beyond our present limitations to access a field of infinite possibilities. Metahuman, what does that mean?
Metahuman means knowing yourself as not a person. There's no such thing as a person. A person is a process in awareness. And awareness is formless and infinite. And that's our true identity. As long as we identify with a person, then we have to answer which person. You begin your life as a fertilized egg and you end it with death. In between is zygote, embryo, infant, toddler. Yeah. So there's no such thing. It's just a process. And as soon as you recognize there's no person, you recognize that you as a person don't exist. That's then you go beyond human to metahuman, where you know yourself as infinite, formless, fundamental, without cause, non-local, and the pure potential of all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. And if you can ground your identity from human to metahuman, then you consciously create the reality. Otherwise, you're creating it anyway. Everything that you see, touch, taste, smell, think about, imagine, feel is a direct reflection every moment of your state of awareness. Because when you go to fundamental awareness, then you realize that everything that you call the physical world is actually a projection of your consciousness and your conditioned mind. So metahuman is what traditional wisdom traditions call liberation from suffering, enlightenment, Ein Sof, Brahman, fundamental reality.
Liberation from suffering is something that I think many people are yearning for. Yeah, I think that's, at the bottom of a lot of
But again,
people's
as
problems.
long as you're a person, you will not be liberated from suffering, because your mind jumps from pleasure to pain, and the extreme pleasure and extreme pain are exactly the same sensation.
Yeah.
You have to transcend sensation in order to heal.
Yeah.
I make a difference personally between belief and faith. I think that belief usually ends up being a cover-up for insecurity. So if I asked you, do you believe in electricity? You'd say, no, I actually experience it. It's in my phone and it's in my computer. So, we tend to believe in things that we want to believe in and we are insecure about. On the other hand, faith is the direct experience of your invisible self and the certainty of your invisible self, without which there's nothing that is visible. And that's a certain experience. It's nothing to do with belief. Just like electricity has nothing to do with belief or gravity.
Can cope with changing our beliefs, but very hard to cope with losing our faith, isn't it? Yeah. Mark, in your book, you said there's always been a shadow of darkness lurking in the backdrop of life. not unlike the 600-pound gorilla in the corner of the room. It's impossible to ignore. What is that darkness?
The darkness is a separation, is the illusion of separation. There's no such thing as separation, but it's embracing the illusion, unconsciously embracing the illusion of separation. That I don't love myself. I don't know myself. I don't trust the world. I think that there's a darkness that is part of our experience that actually has to teach us, to inspire us, to bring us to a place of spirit, to bring us to a place of consciousness that's more inclined to accept and embrace the love of self, the wholeness and the lack of separation that is in the universe. The universe is unified. Everything is unified in the universe. And I think that the darkness is kind of the fear to embrace that, the inability to connect with all that, the inability to merge with the unification, the inability, the unwillingness or the incapability or the fear that I think limit people in their attempt to connect with the fact that everything is one, everything is whole, everything is perfectly imperfect the way it is, and to simply embrace that with a sense of deep, soulful trust. Without that, there's the illusion of darkness. I think that the darkness is an illusion.
Yeah. Deepak, Mark says that accessing our miracle-making self is really quite simple. What suggestions would you offer to people to help them access their miracle-making self?
Instead of identifying situations, circumstances, and events as the cause of how you feel actually orchestrates situations, circumstances, events, and relationships. So feeling is the most fundamental activity of pure consciousness. Even organisms without brains feel their way. And the feeling, if you're connected, as Mark was saying, if you have the experience of connectedness, the feeling you get is empathy, compassion, joy, equanimity, love, and service. That's how you access the source of all experience instead of identifying with the outcomes that we call experience to feel good. You actually connect with the source of experience. Instead of identifying with objects, you identify with the self in which those objects are a perceptual activity. So anytime you're overshadowed by experience, you return back to the self. If I asked you right now, as listening to you, just be aware of who's listening, and you feel a still presence. That's it. So anytime you can turn from the objects of experience to the source of experience. It's called self-referred instead of object-referred. It's as simple as that. Or you can observe the space between breath, space between perceptions, space between sounds, the space between thoughts. It's all the same space. And it's Chit Akash, the infinite, formless, fundamental consciousness prior to space and time.
Mark, what would you advise people if they're looking to know their miracle-making self?
I think Deepak hit the word. I think the word is source. I think that to realize that you don't have a source, you are the source. And to emanate from that place and to choose to consciously project your beingness through that source. And to make the connection that consciousness isn't something you have, it's something that you are. And it's something you can never lose. I think that's the key. And I think source is what enlightens us to that process.
Christina, we meet several people in the movie who share their stories of healing with miracles. Was there any one particular story that stood out for you?
For me, the story of Diane really was a profound story. I loved sharing her story, and her story is all about she overcame some addictions, and she really opened to a space of love. So self-love, we've been talking about self-love, and it's such an important part of the film. And we've touched on our cultural ethos. We have a lot of self-judgment. We have a lot of, self-loathing. And everybody has that. So her story is overcoming that and opening up her heart and opening up to love herself. And Mark was able to, tap in and really, crack her heart open, in some ways. And so she was able to connect in that space. So that story is definitely my favorite. And, ultimately the film is, the goal is the soul here. So we go right into the end of the film is really is understanding your who and what you are, and being an immortal soul, if you will.
Yeah, I get that. Mark, what does nutrition have to do with miracle making?
Well, a number of years ago, I discovered that there's a lot of people that suffer from inflammation of one sort or another. Many different manifestations of inflammation. Many. I mean, inflammation can represent factors of heart disease, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, neurological problems, et cetera, et cetera. So inflammation is a major wrecking ball in the world of health. And one of the most important things I discovered years ago was that there's a number of foods that actually produce a fatty acid called arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid then produces a lot of COX-2 hormones, leukotriene B4s, lipoxins, hydroxylated fatty acids, a lot of inflammatory agents. And this inflammation needs to be thought of as something that can actually be avoided from a nutritional perspective. So foods like egg yolks, not egg whites, egg yolks, peanuts, dairy products, sugars. A lot of these foods actually have the high concentration of arachidonic acid, which increases the COX-2 hormone activity in the body, which again increases the risk for inflammation. The density of these chemical compositions are very difficult for the body to override or to detoxify, to move out. And it's a matter of neutralizing them with positive anti-inflammatory lipids. There's a fatty acid called alpha-linolenic acid, which is kind of like, we think of that as omega-3. We know that as anti-inflammatory. So I think that the objective is to increase your omega-3s dietarily, decrease your arachidonic acid dietarily. Then column 1 is neutral. Kind of curious. Column 1 is neutral in that it produces linoleic acid, which can be inflammatory. It's mixed. But to take something like black currant seed oil, evening primrose oil, these are actually fatty acids that are capable of actually converting into DGLAs, dihomoganolinolenic acid. Dihomoganolinolenic acid is a D8. It's an anti-inflammatory converter. So it takes your neutral foods and converts them over into anti-inflammatory. So I say convert column 1, slow down on column 2, and increase column 3. Those 3 chemistries, nutritionally, have made such a remarkable difference in my practice over the last 20 years or so. It's been truly amazing.
I can imagine that. I mean, if you've got ill health, if you've got inflammation and any of the diseases that come from it, that you're so focused on that, it's impossible to raise your consciousness because you're focused on that.
Of course.
Yeah. You also say that there are 4 states of awareness that present varied manifestations of consciousness. What are those 4 states of awareness?
Well, I bring those into the miracle equation as well. I say that they distill down to our relationship with miracles. That miracles can be rejected, they can be accepted, they can be expected, and they can be created. So I say that when we can evolve from the process of rejecting through the evolutionary process to creation, I think when we have the states, like I said earlier, occupying the source, coming from the source, emanating from the source, knowing that you are a source and that you have the opportunity to emanate your energy through that source. As you emanate through that source, you move more readily from rejecting the notion of miracles to creating them. So again, I say reject, accept, expect, and create. And I think creating comes when we occupy source.
Yeah. Disease, you talk about disease germinates at the soul level. Deepak, could you speak a little bit to that? Because you've written a lot about healing ourselves.
Dis-ease, just the word tells you, it begins with this ease. You lose your lightness of being. So the fundamental state of a biological organism, not just humans, any biological organism, should be a joyful, energetic body. But as we grow into mammals and humans and primates, then we experience emotions, so love, compassion, joy, equanimity. As humans, we also have the desire to have a clear, reflective, alert mind and lightness of being. So these are the four aspects of what I call wholeness or healing: a joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, clear mind, reflective, creative, clear mind, not melodramatic, sentimental, and lightness of being. Lightness of being can only occur if your fundamental identity is formless. So that's ultimate healing is transcendence, number one. The emergence of platonic values like truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, number two, and loss of the fear of death, because death happens to mental constructs, not to you. That's healing.
Yeah, indeed. Mark, in your book, The Way of Miracles, you offer a simple exercise to balance our heart state. I mean, the heart is so much more than a pump that's beating. I mean, I think it's the wellspring of our being. It's the source of, who we are in a sense. Can you say a little bit about, or can you demonstrate or explain how we can balance our heart state?
Well, I think there's several exercises in the book that are all sort of interchangeable. The most important exercise in the book, to me, I think, is the one where I actually ask the reader to take 10 minutes and to go to a mirror and to look in the core of your eyes, to look eyeball to eyeball, and to just spend 10 minutes undistracted looking at the core of your eyes, and just to open yourself up to feel what you feel, just to be clear about the fact that there's an essence. You feel the essence that is you, not the essence that is yours, but the essence that is you, and to just feel a warmth, and just to feel a love and an isness and a connection and a conscious blanketing of energy to that essence that is you, and to just feel that essence that is you. There are also a number of different heart exercises where I talk about putting the hands over the heart and engaging in deep breathing. And as you deep breathe, you feel the chi, the energy in your hands, actually draw the energy of your breath into your heart chakra, and then to release it. And to release it is love. To breathe it in as energy is life force, and to breathe it out as love. So I think that there's a number of different exercises in the book they're centrally focused on the area of connecting us with source, connecting us with our essence, connecting us with love, the vibration of love, the energy of love, to take love to a whole different level in our understanding, to take love away from the material properties, to take love away from the physicality, to take love from a perspective of isness and just a pure state of warmth, and to feel that exchange between self and source is really what I'm trying to accomplish with those exercises in the book. I think that it's important that we take the time to know and to love the source that is self.
Christina, the book, I mean, contains so much information that obviously could not be part of the movie.
Right.
But was there anything, if you were to make a sequel, that you would want to, expand on or include?
Well, there was a lot that I wanted to include in terms of the different science, there was more I wanted to include on heart rate variability, on neuroplasticity, the vagus nerve. There are things that I wanted to include in the film that, maybe part 2 there. But in the book, there are so many practical tools that I think people, that's why they work so well together. The people see the film and they want to know, okay, what are the next steps? What can I do? And go right to the book, because in the book, there are practical tools and things in which you can really work with to, empower yourself and have your own transformation. So those two really work in tandem together. Yeah.
Deepak, can we talk a little bit about artificial intelligence? Because, we've all read reports that you uploaded your consciousness to the AI Foundation. And I know that you've released your digital app. What role do you think artificial intelligence can play in helping us understand who we are?
I think artificial intelligence could be renamed augmented human intelligence instead of artificial, because it's a natural extension of our own intelligence. So do not give too much credibility to a machine as having consciousness. It's an algorithm, and it's a very effective algorithm, and algorithms keep evolving. But artificial intelligence will never experience longing for liberation or sexuality or hunger or thirst, anything that we experience as conscious beings. But it will ultimately augment things like VR, augmented reality, dreamscapes, and expand our ability to access healing modalities, including the healing modalities we're talking about right now, because artificial intelligence is a very good way to get biofeedback and now bioregulation. So, I had put in meditations on Fitbit in real time, where people could look at their heart rate variability, stress levels, electrodermal responses, and then intervene instantly through a breathing technique or meditation. So we are already moving from the era of what we call biofeedback to bioregulation. My current goal is to embark on the creation of something that I'm working with right now. It's called a Wellfie. Instead of a selfie, you take a 10-second video of saying, "Hello, my name is Deepak Chopra," and it'll look at your voice tone, your micro expressions, your eye movements, your facial expressions, your body language, your gestures, and instantly give you a readout of your biological age, your stress levels, your vagal stimulation, and intervention in real time. So I think this is a great boon, as long as we understand that artificial intelligence, number one, cannot be stopped. It's part of our evolution. Number two, it can be used for diabolical and divine purposes, and they have to be built-in ethics as it evolves into the future. But reused rightly, we could use it for personal, social, community, and planetary transformation.
Well, I love the idea of your app. I was reading about it earlier, and the fact that people can consult you even when you're not there, and get answers to their questions. And you do. I read that even if there isn't an answer there, if the algorithms haven't found it amongst all of the books and everything, you do personally get involved and give the answer so that it remains there.
Yeah, and Christina is the producer, the executive producer, and she's very involved in where we are and also in the next evolution of AI and digital Deepak. Yeah. Christina's the producer, and is actually, she and I worked together now for 3 years on this. And it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. But you've also said that while AI is touted as a huge advance, the irony is the direct perils of AI are already here in the form of our own human intelligence. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, unless we evolve beyond our tribal mindset, we're still living in medieval minds and modern capacities. That's a sure route for extinction. So, unless our emotional and spiritual evolution keeps pace with our amazing creativity in technology, we could be doomed. It's about time for us to wake up to our fundamental nature. Then we can use all these technologies to help create a critical mass for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Otherwise, I think we are sleepwalking ourselves on to extinction.
In the many years that you have been teaching about spirituality and wellness, and it started a while back. Looking at where the world is at today, do you feel that it's devolving rather than evolving?
It's doing both. For every step forward, there's a half a step backward, and that's the nature of evolution. If you had only creativity, you wouldn't have any brakes on it. And if you had only entropy, of course, that would also be a problem. So I think we're just evolving as a species and also learning that we evolved not as biological organisms, but as ecosystems of sentience. And once we understand that, and we already have the technologies for reversing climate change, for fixing the ecosystem, for creating a biosphere that's nurturing to all of life. But we don't have the right story right now. We don't have the emotional and spiritual connection to what we call the environment or the biosphere. In fact, that's another problem with the word environment. It's our extended body. So the atmosphere is our breath. The rivers are our circulation. The earth is recycling as our body. The stars may be atoms circulating in our body right now, and we all share the same breath. So we have a personal body and a universal body. They're all equally ours. You put a rabbit in a vacuum, it dies. You put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. You put them both together, they thrive. So unless we change our vocabulary and our idea that we are, the current science treats us as biological organisms in an environment when we are the universe itself. We are the source of all experience. And that's why transcendence from mental constructs is the fundamental key to our evolution, and using technology in a way that is humane and divine instead of diabolical.
Christina, in directing and producing the movie, is there, what element made you especially proud of it?
I think bringing awareness to the very powerful inner world that we all have, and hopefully through that awareness, people will really be empowered to evolve consciously and to become the miracle makers that they are. So, and I think that we got that into the film. That was really important for me to get that in.
Yeah. Mark, what about you?
I think that the single goal, the single most important thought that I brought into this film, and the book as well, by the way, that there's anybody in the world, anybody in the universe that I could actually open up a little bit of light for, with love, out of love. So if I could bring my love to a place that brought anybody light, I'd be happy.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular, one thing, if you could, end this interview with one thing that you want people to understand, what would it be?
Yes, that they are miracles. They are miracles. They're miracle makers after that fact, but they have to first connect with the fact that they are miracles. So I want everybody to know that they are a source that's eternal, that's limitless, that's full of light and love, and has no limitations whatsoever. That is what they are. That's the source of their being, and that the miracles that they are here to create a number of resounding, loving miracles while they're conscious of the fact. I think to make them more conscious of the fact that they can make miracles that are limitless, endless, and resplendent. And I think that's the most important thing that I wanted to awaken with people, inspire.
Well, we're out of time now. So Deepak, Mark, and Christina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I think this is going to be more than an award-winning movie. It'll stand the test of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
And if any of you want to watch The Way of Miracles, Accessing Your Superconsciousness is the title of the book. The Way of Miracles Way. The Way of Miracles is the movie. You can go to thewayofmiracles.com, and you can also find the book on Amazon and all good bookstores. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us.